You're listening to Permission to Shine, the podcast by Sherisse Bisram. The Oxford Dictionary describes permission as the action of officially allowing someone to do a particular thing, consent, authorization. What if you were that someone and you gave yourself the permission to be everything you wanted to be and more? No more playing small and accepting less than. You are worthy of the life of your dreams, regardless of what it is that you've been through. And honestly, it's exactly what you've been through that has shaped you into the version of yourself that you are now. Like a diamond, you've endured so much, but instead of breaking, you have become stronger and brighter. And if that's not a reason to shine, then I don't know what is. And if nature can do it, then why the hell can't you? You are brave, you are strong, you are powerful, and you are enough. Hear my call and give yourself the permission to shine, because you don't realise how many people are inspired by your light. Like, share, follow, subscribe, and listen out for more. Stay tuned. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome back to episode 5. I'm really excited today because I've got one of my best friends on with me. Now, she's never done a podcast before, so this is all super new for her. Although she did do a bit of radio in her time back in the day. She is full of personality, but so much depth, and she has so much to say, and I hope that, everything that she shares resonates to some degree. She's also really funny. I hope you find her funny because I think she's hilarious. But yes, I will welcome in my best friend, Jade Price.
Hello, what an introduction, Miss Bisram. Thank you so much. Is that over now? Can I go?
No. So, okay, for people that don't know you, Jade, say a little bit about what your job role is and also what else you are known for. You'll know my cue by that.
Yes. So professionally, if you like, as professional as possible, I am a substance and alcohol misuse recovery worker. So I've got a caseload of clients who struggle with substance misuse, whether that be illicit drug use or alcohol use. And it's about kind of putting them on the path of kind of recovery, and helping them overcome their addiction problems.
And why might people know you?
People may know me for my self-published book, Normal. Oh my God, how embarrassing! I forgot my own title of my book. Normal. What's the title of my
memoir.
book? Sherisse? That's it. A memoir of grief and healing.
I mean, it's been out for a few years, mate. So
you know, out for a few years, yeah.
No, and it's incredible that you wrote that book. And I guess some people might think that those two things, like the book about grief and the job that you're in now, have completely no synchronicity. But actually, a lot of our conversations about how are they linked. So if you want to kind of tell the listeners about your life, how you come to write in the book, and then also how that now links with your career. And it's funny, isn't it? Because actually, we only really correlated the two recently. Like that wasn't something that we thought was all connected until we started unpacking together. So tell us a little bit about your life and the writing of the book and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So way back into childhood, I had a pretty decent childhood, to be fair. No trauma in childhood that I can think of, but then obviously my world crumbled in 2016. I lost my mum in 2016 on the 8th of January. She was, at the time, she was unwell, not to the extent that we expected a passing, but she had gone into a hospital just for a routine kind of procedure. She had to have an acidic drain from her stomach. She went in on the Tuesday, and by the Friday she had passed away. And I was only 25 then, so kind of the peak of life, I suppose. Now I'm 32. That saddens me even more, to be honest. And it was, and I wrote about this in the book. One of the only things I can describe it as is I was in a snow globe, and I was the figure in a snow globe that was completely still, and everything around me was just spinning out of control. And at that moment, I didn't know it, but at that moment, that's when my life completely changed. Some for the good, some for the bad. And it was, and I know you're fully aware of this, but it was a completely life-shattering experience. I'd completely changed as a person, maybe without knowing. It was brutal. It was absolutely brutal, and there's no other way to describe grief. It's an instant trauma. It's not something that builds up, and it's definitely not linear. Grief is a monster. It is an absolute monster. And I struggled. I struggled for a very, very long time until I started putting pen to paper, really. And I can honestly say that the book, as cliche as it may sound, but the book did save my life. That's why, you know, writing the book was never about, oh, you know, getting a name for myself or it being successful or numbers or anything like that. The book started out as self-help therapy almost, you know, and then it just took on a life of its own, and it kept me going for a very, very long time. I dedicated every Sunday to writing, and it was literally every Sunday, near enough 24 hours sometimes of pure soul bearing. And I've always kind of enjoyed creative aspects in life. And I always used to make stories up, like weird stories, actually. I'm obviously not going to disclose them now. Nothing that weird, but do you know, like when you're a kid and you just make up, like, I don't know, once upon a time I went to a land far, far away, that sort of stuff. I really enjoyed that kind of aspect of creating a different universe, in a sense. So I suppose for me, in a really, really unnatural and abnormal setting of, you know, losing my mum, I found comfort and normality in something that was almost second nature to me, to put pen to paper, you know. So yeah, it just it was just my therapy, you know, and I never ever imagined at the time it helping anyone else, because and that's the thing with grief, you're so channeled in your own bubble almost, to the point that you actually kind of neglect that other people around you are also grieving. But yeah, I mean, the book, and it's weird because I read some of it back occasionally now, and it's so clear to see the progression, not only from the start of the grief through the middle of the grief, and then now looking back from the position I'm in life now compared to the ending of the book as such. It, again, complete parallel people, complete different people, and growth is the only word that I can really that comes to mind when I think that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like me and Jade have known each other since school, so you know, everything Jade touched on then about even writing, you know, like expressive writing was always your thing. You were always like there at lunchtime with the teacher writing and doing things like that.
Listen, I was a little boffin. Let's not pretend. I was a boffin, and I'm not afraid to say it. My English teacher gave me a nickname of the Queen of Metaphors. So you don't get that for being, you know, not good at writing.
But do you know what? That's good. I mean, we need to be like, the term boffin is made to be like a not cool name, but it's cool. It's
listen,
cool, man.
I'm cool. I'm cool. I know. I was cool.
Exactly.
I was cool at school.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But I think, yeah, this is where me and Jade we synchronize on a lot of things, obviously losing a parent. And we had this like joke that we said like dead parent club, didn't we? Because we were like, well, you know, we know, but because I'd experienced it, I felt like I was able to constantly ask Jade through that process, are you okay? Because that's something that people don't ask. And I do feel like I probably more than others asked you that, but also got the answer, you know, like I feel like you were quite, you was over the surface for a lot of people, but I feel like I did get a gritty answer from you every now and again. And, you know, it's so important to say that it is life-changing, you know, like I completely went through that process myself, but equally experiencing it as a best friend from your perspective, watching you go through the change and everything changing around you. And I think, you know, the only light I can shed on that was the fact that I would say that before this happened, you'd go above and beyond for everyone else, you'd people please, there'd be not set boundaries, whereas the minute that all shifted for you, you got so clear on what was important to you and how you wanted life to be, and you started to take life by the hands instead of just like blasing through everything. And I think that was a real powerful thing. And the minute you start to write the book, everything changed. Like I feel like we said, it's that outlet, and again, it's the pen to paper, the journaling, the out of mind into something, and writing was your gift, so it made so much sense that you were going to thrive in this arena. And I've read the book, and it is so beautiful, and I think even as a best friend, being with you on that journey, even reading the story again was just so profound. Like, it was so lovely, and I urge everyone to read it. We'll share the link in the notes of the show as well, so people can purchase it. And it's not a morbid read as well, so I just want to let everyone know that it's actually very light-hearted, and it's got really beautiful memories in there that you've added that it feels like spring. I don't know, the books that has that kind of energy, which is so lovely. And I think that really sums up who you are. Like this, you come across as like firm and strong, but actually you're just a field of daisies. That is who your soul is. Yes.
Wow. Updating Tinder profile immediately.
No, but I would say, what kind of made you then get into this job, and then we'll kind of go into how this kind of relates together.
Yeah, I mean, that was a journey in itself. So I used to work for a national newspaper. Don't worry, I wasn't a journalist. But I used to work for a national newspaper in a managerial role for sales. And I'd been there for a very, very long time. Too long, some may say. And during, I think it was COVID was the tipping point for me. I know a lot of people absolutely hated COVID for the right reasons. A lot of people struggled with that, and that's totally understandable. But weirdly, I thrived. I absolutely loved not having any social engagements, having an excuse and blaming Boris for not being able to attend something. But it also gave, and I think this is the same for everyone, aside from all the kind of brutality of what COVID brought to people, I think it gave a lot of people the opportunity to rest, to stop, analyse what's going on in their life, and actually start evaluating what serves them and what no longer does serve them. And for me, that was the job I was in. It didn't fulfill me in any way, shape or form. I felt creatively suffocated. And this was actually before I'd actually released the book, before I self-published. And I'd already, put pen to paper, as it were, and wrote my resignation. That was ready to go. And if luck would have it, I say luck, a lot of people disagree, but I got made redundant after COVID. And I took a year out. I took a complete year out. I had the vision of never returning to a 9 to 5. Didn't want that involvement at all. Couldn't stand the idea of going back to a job. But money runs out, right? If something's always going out and nothing's coming in, money runs out. During that time is when I self-published. So that was absolutely incredible. That's when I found that kind of zest for life again. And during that year out, I kind of every intuition that I've had during that time was telling me that I needed to do something mental health related or something involving people, which for a majority of people that know me is quite strange, because as much as I do now feel, and we'll probably come on to this later, that my purpose is people, I'm probably the least people person internally anyway. Much prefer dogs. But that was a light bulb moment, that I needed to do, not needed, but I wanted, and without being really cheesy, but my soul burned to help people, and that's the only way I can describe it. So I did the daunting job searches, and you're fully aware of that process. I was absolutely annoyed every time I had to send a CV off, because it is a grueling process, and it was almost facing that kind of beast that I didn't want to see again, which is that 9 to 5 aspect, And then this job came up, substance misuse worker, and I thought, what's that about? What on earth is that going to entail? And then I applied for it. DBS check took absolutely ages, to the point I had me questioning, have I done something? And you know, thankfully I hadn't you know, lost my subconscious one night and done something illegal. And then I got the okay, and started in November, I believe. And I can honestly say it has been one of the most eye-opening, enjoyable, and I know that's a really, really strange choice of word considering the industry that it's in, but seeing people in such misery, now bear with me here, I know how this sounds, but seeing people in such misery and such internal pain, through, you know, choices of their own, or, you know, just complete unfortunate circumstances that society's basically chosen for them in some respects, and being able to help them and support them through some of these challenges, and seeing that light bulb moment go off in their head, is one of the most fulfilling things I've experienced in life, to be fair. Don't get me wrong, there are some days that I wish I'd stayed in bed, but I think that's with every job, right? Even if you are absolutely doing your purpose, there's going to be days that you think, oh, work, great. But I can honestly say, this isn't a job. This isn't a 9 to 5. It's not working for a company. It's not lining the pockets of someone. It's actually, I'm going to work every day with the ability and the opportunity to completely help someone change their life. And I think this is, for the time being, is exactly where I need to be. And it's through this job that I've worked out my purpose is people, as ironic as that is.
No, it's, I mean, for anyone that knows you, it's not ironic at all, because I think you consider yourself as an introvert, but I know you as not being an extrovert, but being so compassionate and being the shoulder that everyone goes to cry on, and, you know, being the pillar of a lot of friendships. And naturally you just emit this aura of just comfort, and I think that's what people need. And I think that's, you know, something I've always seen in you and for you. And when this job came up, I was like, you need to apply for it, this is perfect, you know. I was like, yes, do it. And I think you were like, oh gosh, I don't know. But, you know, hearing all of your stories as we go into more detail, you know, you know, in life, we talk about it and stuff, and just hearing how much you've made an impact, and it's just through being who you are, mate. Do you know what I mean? And that's really what gifts are. And I think what I'll say is, you said about the money running out. Now, I think that money's a mindset, but in this situation for your life, I think the money had to run out to push you to get that job, because your natural state of being is chill. I'll just chill and be safe. I will chill.
If I chilled anymore, if I got more laid back, I'd probably be horizontal, you know, most of the time.
And that's why I feel like the universe had to put that in front of you to make you do this thing, because this is like so life-changing. It was only the other day when you said to me, I think my purpose is people. I was like, I've known this forever. I was like, I've literally known this. This is exactly what you should be doing. And it's just so beautiful for me to see you fully step into that as well, because I think, you know, we can think and say things about the people we love all the time, but until you acknowledge it for yourself, will you fully take that space and give yourself the permission to shine and be the full version of yourself? So it's so wonderful and lovely, you know, to experience that. But I think let's go now into a little bit of the link between the two, because this is really where we have like really deep conversations about, and it's so powerful. And I feel like it's really important to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think anyone that works in substance misuse industry will probably tell the same story. Every single person that I have dealt with, and I've only been there, I'm still a baby compared to the guys that I work with who have been doing it for years and incredible what they do. But it's not one person that comes through those doors hasn't got mental health issues. And when I say issues, I'm talking deep-rooted trauma, typically starting childhood trauma, that just hasn't been or hasn't had the opportunity to heal. And then I see a lot of kind of systematically broken people. And what I mean by that is where the system has really failed them, really let them down. There's been occasions where I'm mindful not to say too much because of confidentiality, but there's been occasions where there's people that have been, that their treatment's been ended with a mental health service because they've got substance issues. And for me, being so black and white in the way I think sometimes, like so logical, to my own detriment at times, you know, I can't understand how that people can't tell that there is a clear link here. And I know that they know, you know, that's the reason why mental health services and drug misuse services exist. But it's almost that kind of passing the buck. You know, if someone has an addiction, then they need to sort that problem out before we deal with the mental health issues, which in theory may be a great idea, but actually the reality is the reason why they've got substance misuse issues is because they've got deep rooted trauma, an incredible backlog of mental health problems, and I think yeah, absolutely, and any problem has to be taken by the root. You know, no one wakes up one day, I don't care, you know, the myths and the stereotypes, nobody wakes up one day and decides that taking illicit drugs is a great idea. And I'm talking, you know, hard illicit drugs. No one chooses that for fun. Nobody. I don't care what stereotypes you have pre-made about someone. There is always an underlying reason as to why someone turned to that. And 9 times out of 10 from the conversations I have with the clients, it's a numbing aspect. They take it to numb their mind,
to mask their pain.
To mask their pain. And every single person in life is doing that one way or the other. One way or the other, people are masking something. And I think we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, when I think society at the moment, just looking around, it's people are putting on smiles that actually, if you scratch a little bit under that surface, people are struggling. People are really, really struggling. So, 100%. And collectively, you can feel it, you know, energetically wise, you can feel it. You can feel that kind of collective, I wouldn't say suffering, but there's a collective pain.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think the pandemic really heightened that awareness as well, because I always say, like, for me, as you, the pandemic really was a great time for me to go inwards and do the work. And without the pandemic, I would have still been using busyness and burnout to cover up, obviously, my mental health issues. Now, I say burnout, I mean, as in that thing of working to the bone, because then I didn't have to feel. And that
using the grind mentality for so many years.
Yeah, exactly, that hustle culture. And I felt like that defined my worth. And it really is about, like, what I keep saying about this, we're going through that age of Aquarius now, where we're coming into the rise of the feminine. And what I mean by that is the rise of the feminine energy, which is all about the being. So we are understanding that this patriarchal way of grinding hard doesn't work anymore. And I think that what I always say in every situation is that when you lead with vulnerability, you get returned with vulnerability. And I think that's really one actionable thing that people that are listening can do in order to get to the root of a lot of things. I think, like, as you said, like, scratching the surface, you know, like, people always say, oh, are you okay? How are you doing? No one actually is asking, how are you doing? They're just saying, you're right, how are you doing? And that's really the problem, because if we actually did say, how are we doing really and truly, and most of the time we'd be like, do you know what, I'm really shattered, I've had a busy week this week, but I'm plowing through. Or, to be honest, mate, I need a day off, I'm exhausted, but here we are. Do you know what I mean? Like, that would be a real reality of a lot of people, what they're thinking, instead of this toxic positivity thing where we're like, I'm good, you? If you're not good, just be honest. Like, that's really how I live my life now. And a lot of people are taken aback as well when I say, oh, you know, I'm a bit overwhelmed at the minute because I've got this and this going on, but apart from that, I'm all right, you know. Or if I'm not having a good day, I'll be like, do you know what, today's not a good day, but, you know, it is what it is. And a lot of people are like, oh, okay. And then they're like, actually, do you know what, yeah, I'm the same. And then that opens the door for these conversations. But you know, in your workplace, these people are years and years down the line of using these things as a form of escapism from their daily life. And I feel like the pain is so deep that they don't want to open Pandora's box, because that's when obviously it'll purge out. And almost they're living in a purge, aren't they, really? Because it's all just like coming up and there's no control and it's all crazy and stuff. And I think it goes back to that thing about that Oprah Winfrey book that I talk about all the time, like Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Perry, What Happened to You? We're also quick to judge these people as substance abuse users or like alcoholics or whatever, but no one's actually saying, what happened to you to get you to this point? Can we give you some sort of holistic therapy to help? Have you listened to meditation? Do you listen to hypnosis? Like no one's giving those bits of advice. And I know a lot of the time in those situations as well, people seem unhelpful, but if you don't go the right way round, it's never going to work. Do you know what I mean? It's like trying to get through a brick wall with a hammer. It's not going to work. You either need a bulldozer or you just need to climb around the sides or go over the top. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
I think obviously during the time that I've been there, and like I said, it's only been a short while in theory, but there is resistance. There is resistance for these people, and for me, the way I see it is, you've got a human being for as long as they can remember has had to, well, not had to, but they have lived in a survival mode, and that is their go-to. They survive on a daily basis. However that looks for them is completely different to how it may look for us. Our survival is completely different to someone else's, but they are constantly in a survival mode. And I think some of the resistance is because of the kind of environments they're in and the circles they may keep. That survival instinct is that they're always on a defense. And actually, when someone is trying to help them, their mentality might go straight to, okay, so for what reason? What's the hidden agenda here? Because of that survival mode that they're always in. And that resistance comes from fear. They're probably absolutely scared of the uncertainty because they may never have seen a day of sober in their life. And I think being that constant person in their corner to say, actually, do you know what, mate, you've got this, and I know that sounds a bit toxic, as in like toxic positivity, but actually just that one phrase, they've probably never heard that for years. They've probably never heard that for years.
I don't think that's toxic at all, mate, because you're saying it because you believe it.
Yeah,
and absolutely. I think that's the difference. It's like you see something in them that they can't see for themselves, and that's in a way, mate, you're mentoring without even realizing it. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Every day is a coach. It is a coaching,
absolutely.
coaching kind of job.
But
really,
what I'll say on that as well is that we are creatures of habit. So what's happened is, because they've been constantly shown that they aren't good enough or they're not worthy or all of these things, that again is a deeply embedded narrative that they're believing because it's all they've ever been shown. So it takes real courage and bravery to be like, you know what, I don't want to follow this anymore. And that goes for so many of us in different avenues, whether it's like relationships, abuse, trauma, and anything, monetary things. We all have the capability to change how we look at things and how we move through our lives, but if we've only ever saw one side, it's really hard. And I think that's why having someone to support you is so important. But equally, the little baby steps need to be celebrated too, because those baby steps are actually one of the hardest things, because the strides get bigger, the more confident you get and the more easier it becomes. But those first steps out of it, that really is so hard. And I think, I already know that you've had some successful cases already in the last few months, and it just shows that, you're in alignment with who you are and what you should be doing. But equally, like, it's resonating because people need you. Do you know what I mean? They need your light in that space, which is so lovely, man. I'm so happy that, these people get to share you. And because obviously I've shared you my whole life, it's been nice because you've helped me through, some of my dark times. And I know that obviously we've been there for each other, which is lovely. But when obviously it's in a work setting, it's, helping more people, isn't it? Which is, purpose and all the good stuff.
All the good stuff.
So I like to always ask, like, obviously with your with writing your book.
You're going to ask me for money, are you?
No. With your book, and then like dealing with the trauma yourself, like as in, the grieving, and then also the work you're doing now, do you feel like there's been life lessons that you've had to keep learning? Is there like certain things that keep popping up that you are still going through to push through? Because I think it's always nice for us to hear that, not everyone's perfect and amazing. We're all still struggling in our own things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every single day I get shown something that I need to work on and continue to push through every day. And I think actually that should be the way. I don't think we should ever lose that aspect of learning, especially about ourselves. So to be perfectly blunt, my biggest thing, and I think for many years to come, it's going to be something I'm going to have to work on really hard to unpack, and as to why it's even there. But the validation aspect of, I don't take compliments very well at all. I don't. I get awkward. I get just absolutely strange. It not unsettles me, but I don't like hearing it. I can take criticism, can take that on the chin all day long. But that validation aspect is a very foreign kind of idea to me. And I think that's because we have these deep chats all the time, but society's set up for us to basically just the rat race, right? That's exactly all it is. It's, you go to school, you learn the school curriculum to make sure that you go out and get a job and pay back into the government. Pretty much that's how it's set up. And as much as I was okay at school, I was still very, very average. And, family were definitely supportive. I went to uni and I've done this, I've done that, but I wouldn't say I've ever been the best at anything. Does that make sense? Not that I felt that anyway, because I've never had that validation aspect of, this is what you are. And it's only at later life that started coming in. And I think that's where the uncomfortable aspect of dealing with those compliments or those identifications of validation comes in. And that's something I'm definitely going to have to unpack, because I know I'm capable of greatness. I'm absolutely aware of that. It's just sitting with that idea that actually other people might be able to see that too. And that makes me feel really, really uncomfortable. And I have no idea why. I have no answers to that.
I know why.
Go on.
Because I feel like you're comfortable playing the backing person, like the person that's lifting everyone else up, but actually the thought of you standing in the spotlight just shining is scary for you. But you've been shining this whole time, mate, and I think it's just you that doesn't see yourself as stepping forward, but everyone around you does. And I think that's the thing there. Even now you're like,
it's just uncomfortable, mate.
But it's true. Like, it's true, and that you're worthy of all of that stuff, and that you even know yourself that writing the book was a massive achievement, and like everything you've gone through is a massive achievement. And from where we live and our circumstances and all of these things, that we are pushing the narrative of what was expected of us, especially from the school that we went to. A lot of people had children really young out of school, like we're talking teenagers, or we're on the government benefits now, which I'm not judging anyone for that, and it's circumstantial, I understand, but equally we chose not to live that narrative, and we pushed through, regardless of what traumas we have experienced. I think that you are worthy of the compliments. It just feels weird to accept them, doesn't it?
Just feels so weird. I don't think I'll ever get comfortable with that.
I think you will.
All right.
Well, I'll make you.
I'll have to take one of your classes.
Yeah, you will, and I'll beat you. I'll be like, you will love yourself, and you do love yourself. This is the thing.
I do. Yeah, I'm very and I think that's definitely one of the aspects. Just to go back onto the question you asked about, obviously the journey through the book and obviously the grief process in such is the self. I don't know how to articulate this, but I have never been so comfortable with who I am as a person and as a being on this planet as much as I have after and during the grief process. Obviously, during the grief process, and anyone that's experienced it or has witnessed someone experience it, when you're in that tornado, you cannot see anything apart from flashbacks of what's happened. You can't see your growth, no matter how obvious it may be or may not be to others. You can't see anything. You can't see beyond what's happening in that present, which ironically actually is what people strive for, is to live in the present, and something so dark as grief actually gives you the ability to do that, and for that I'll forever be grateful, because it's allowed me to become the person I am. And what was the question again? I completely forgot.
What did I say? The lessons that you needed to keep learning.
Lessons, yeah. I suppose one of the biggest lessons, and I still take this today, and I know you'll champion this as well. I'll always tell people the same advice that I give myself, is feel everything. Sit with it. You know, if you are really, really not feeling okay, sit with that feeling. Do not try and make yourself better by doing anything that doesn't feel authentic in that moment. If you want to have a good cry, then you just sob your little heart out, because the reason why you're upset and the reason why you feel like you need to cry is because your body is telling you to do so. So stop ignoring it. You wouldn't ignore it if you was hungry. You wouldn't ignore anything else that's, you know, physical feeling that you might enjoy. But we're all too quick to kind of suppress any sort of emotion that people don't want to see. And I think that comes down to, again, self-worth. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons. I mean, obviously Mother's Day just gone, and mate, it was painful. And it's what, 7 years on. Not that there is any time limit on how grief affects anyone, and it certainly doesn't. And that's one of the biggest lessons, actually. Sorry, I'm rambling now.
No.
One of the biggest things is grief does that old saying of time's a healer. I call BS on that, actually, purely because it doesn't get any less painful. It will always have that sting in its tail every single year, every single day, every single minute, you know, and that's not to be dark and gloomy on it. What happens is grief doesn't change its size. Grief stays exactly the same size, and it stays exactly the same place as it is when it started inside you. The only thing that changes is your life starts adapting around it.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with time. And obviously I don't want to go too deep because time doesn't exist in that realm, but you as a person will grow naturally, you know, whether that be new careers or, you know, new relationships or broken relationships. Something around your life changes. Grief doesn't. Grief stays exactly the same. It's got nothing to do with time whatsoever. So it will always be painful. And, you know, Mother's Day this year, I let myself stay in bed for a bit. I stayed in bed most of the day, I'm not going to lie. Had a little cry to myself, did stare at myself in the mirror and realise this is weird. But I did. I sat with it. And I let myself feel it. I've let myself feel it, because there have been occasions where I haven't, because it's that self-deprecating idea that, well, it's been this long now, I should feel better. Well, why? For who?
No.
For whose purpose?
Absolutely.
Who are you suiting with that? You know, it's not gonna change anything. You know, to make other people comfortable in your own misery is not the one.
No,
just
absolutely.
feel what you need to feel.
And yeah, I completely vouch for that myself, because obviously, as we know, I've not been an emotional person. Like, I wasn't an emotional person for a large chunk of my life, and that was the armoring up for my grief that I experienced. And I think, you know, my thing I like to say now is, they're called feelings because you're supposed to feel them, and that is literally it, isn't it? You have to feel it, you have to sit in it. And I think as well, just for life's sake, and I say this all the time, it's the seasons. You know, we can't be in summer and happy time all the time. You have to let yourself go down to come back up again, because you wouldn't appreciate anything if you were constantly on a high. So I think all of it is just all connected. And I think with the grief, it just reminds us of, you know, that beautiful memory of the person. And it's a wonderful thing that we have the ability to remember that love and that space for that person always. So I think that grief is just almost like memories, isn't it? You know, almost.
Absolutely.
Like missing.
Grief is a reminder of the love that we've lost. That's what it is, right? And I think that is a really cliche saying, but you know, the reason why cliches exist is because they're true. But I think as well, you know, one of the biggest things that got me through my journey is a saying, I can't remember who said it, but it is quite a famous quote, which is, pain is inevitable, but suffering is the optional part. You know, pain is always going to exist. The only thing we control about pain is and how much energy we allow that pain to sit with, you know. Brave face, no such thing. What's the point? What is the point of brave face? Who are you brave facing for? Because it ain't yourself.
And that's exactly it, isn't it? It's like when you love yourself fully, you embrace all of those parts. And Yeah, I love that saying too. It's a really nice one, because I think my thing always is go through it, like
Yeah.
get through it, because if you try to avoid it and go round it and under it, it's going to come and rear its ugly head at some point, or it'll catch up with you and it'll catch your tail and it'll overcome you at some point. So it's better to just go through it, get through the other side of it, and you'll find that you've cleared another obstacle. Or like if you're looking at it as like a video game, it's like you've leveled up to the next level of whatever it is, but you have to get through it in
Yeah.
order to be able to really experience the beauty of that part. But yeah, thank you, that was all really
Absolutely.
lovely. What I was going to ask you as well is, can you think about one iconic moment in your life where you did give yourself the permission to be your truest, fullest self? I won't say permission to shine, because you don't like being shiny, so I'm just saying as in, like, when was that time that you thought, do you know what,
Ooh.
this moment in my life was when I was like, no, I'm stepping forward into the world, this is my time, I'm taking up space?
I mean, to be fair, I think the first time was when I wrote the book. Well, not wrote the book, when I published the book. For me, that was a massive step. That was a huge step, not only putting myself out there, as even now it's cringy for me to say. It's not cringy, but it feels cringy to me to say, oh, I'm an author. Like, okay, cool. Cool story, bro. I'm an author, but I think for me that the kind of shining aspect was, for 3 years of my life, I completely bared my soul, and only I had, and a select few had a privilege of kind of getting that soul bearing in the book, and then went through the corrections process, and that was a grief process in itself. Got completely ripped apart for all the right reasons, to make it the best possible kind of product, in a sense. But that was grueling, letting someone completely read what you've bared and say, actually, you need to change that. You need to completely rewrite that. It's almost like, well, how dare you do that? And I think for me, that was, as soon as that happened, that process, I was just like, actually, do you know what? Some of it I took on board, some of it I didn't, because at that moment I felt confident enough in what I've done, and that was my story. That's how I wanted to tell it, and that was my way of saying, do you know what? You've got the permission now, as you said, to just put this out in the world. And I won't lie, I had complete anxiety for about 17,000 hours after I hit submission, and realised that it was now accessible to the whole world, really. Not that the whole world's bought it yet, but that was mind-boggling, and I don't think I'll ever get used to that feeling of saying, I've got a published book, I've got a self-published book that is available for anyone to go and read. And I think that's not only my shining moment, as you said, but it's probably one of the best achievements I've ever done in my entire life.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I always say to Jade, I'm like, can you just tell everyone, hi, I'm Jade Price, I'm an author, or can you put it in your bio and things? Because she just keeps herself so modest, and I think that's really what it is for you. You're so modest and humble, and I think really and truly, like, it is incredible. How many people do we know that have written her book? I mean, personally, not many at all. So massive achievement in your lifetime, let alone right now and who you are. So it's incredible, mate. And I know that there'll be more to come, which is exciting.
Well, this is what I was going to say. What's funny about that is, as soon as I hit kind of submit, and then I posted about it, as you do, trying to get that kind of, because I spoke about it for years, because obviously it takes me 3 years to write, and I spoke about it endlessly, saying, oh, I'm writing a book, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of my, like, not party trick, but something, niche. As soon as I let everyone know it had done, the first questions was, well, when's the next one? It's like, well, I only literally just finished this one. But I think that, to me, is kind of that rearing its ugly head of validation, almost, in the sense of, do I ever actually see myself as an author? Do I see myself writing another one? The chances are yes, because I do feel that that's something I'm very good at, and that's me being as modest as I can be. But do I see myself as like the J.K. Rowling of of grief, no. And I definitely don't want to be the Adele of grief, you know, coming out every 6 years with a different grief book. That's just not, it's not going to be great, is it?
Well, hopefully your life doesn't allow that for that anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want that to happen.
No, but
yeah,
what I mean is based on our conversations, knowing that there's been ideas that have swum around for a long time, and that's where I'm going from, not on my expectation, because I don't expect any of it from you at all. But I know that we've spoken about it for years, and it's just been something that comes up and down every time. But yeah, thank you for all of your lovely insights, and you've definitely given embedded bits of advice throughout of this. But I kind of want you to just share some top tips for what's worked for you with, let's say, 2 for healing grief, and then 2 things that you do when you are overwhelmed to de-stress.
Okay. So dealing with grief, I think, is one of, if I had the answer to that, I'd probably be a multi-billionaire. There is no dealing with grief, and as cynical as that may seem, the reason why I say that is because it's not linear. You know, there is a grief cycle, which, you know, is certain stages in grief, but it doesn't mean that it is in order. It's a cycle. So that means it can go anywhere. You know, you can start from here and go that way or that way. And it's a cycle that doesn't end, because it is a cycle. That means it's a continuous thing. So it's not linear. It's never going to end. And again, this does sound all very morbid and stuff, but it doesn't have to be that darkness. It doesn't have to be that cloud. The way I look at it, and the way I saw it, and what changed for me in the grief process was, you've got 2 options with grief. You can either allow grief to be the protagonist in your life, or you can be the protagonist in your own life and deal with grief that way. And to kind of put that in layman terms is, you can either live inside grief, or you can allow grief to live inside you. And allowing grief to live inside you is the only way you're going to survive.
So what, I feel that completely and absolutely understand that, but what was your coping mechanisms through, you know, that time? Let's just have 2 things that, I mean, and like we said, this is so overarching as a point where we are so all individual, and the way we deal with things is all completely different. But we just want to know what worked for you in this time, other than writing the book, or maybe writing the book was the main one, and that's absolutely okay, you know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the book completely saved my life, and that's not me being dramatic. You know, there were some very dark thoughts in that process of grief, and the book acted as my kind of savior, in a sense. You know, whatever was in here was on paper. So you don't have to go into, you know, when people say write your thoughts down, you don't have to be looking at, you know, the end product of those thoughts. It can literally just be writing down what's in your mind, and maybe burning it later, or do whatever, get rid of it, shred it, whatever. As long as it's out of your head, I'll definitely, you know, record it somehow, however you need to. And therapy, please, by all means. Yes, the waiting lists are, you know, absolutely excruciating. But please, I urge every single person on the planet, whether it's grief or anything, needs therapy. We all need therapy, but grief in particular. And I think going through therapy was definitely what I needed, and it helped absolutely heaps. Because one of the biggest things that you go through in grief is you don't want to burden anyone. And the reason why we don't want to burden anyone is because there's people we love, and there's people that are also going through that same thing. Whereas when you go to therapy, to put it in the nicest way possible, you're telling a stranger that's getting paid for it.
Absolutely.
So use it. Go to therapy. That's
100%. And that's so, you know, both things you said there are always things that I talk about, you know, the writing it down, the mental outlet. It's like, you know, can write it down on paper, you could soundboard it in a voice note to yourself where no one has to listen to it. You discard of it however you wish, but as long as it's out of your mind, it's out of your body. And again, I pair that up with a physical release. So it's like, you know, like for me, it's moving, but then I am a dance background. But I know that even just, you know, for yourself, you were walking a lot. You've always had dogs, you know, like for you, always out and fresh air. That's something that you just naturally do. And then the therapy aspect, you know, that is the nail on the head right there, isn't it? We always feel burdened by the people we love. And if we ever told the person we love, even if we appeared to be in a really great state of mind, if we told them, I'm having really dark thoughts at the moment, they'd be scared, they'd be panicking. Whereas someone you don't know that you're paying for that service, they're going to help you reframe everything, or they'll just sit there and listen. Either way, you are getting what's blocking you out of your body, and you're freeing that space for you to live ultimately, isn't it? So no, that's definitely it. So yeah, thank you so much for all of that. My last thing is always my little soul to soul message. So it's kind of like a bit of a channeled message. It's like, in this moment, what do you think that someone listening would need to hear? Maybe it's a past version of yourself would need to hear. Maybe it's just whatever comes to you right now that's like really soul led, what that you want to share.
No pressure. I think as human beings, we are so, like, and you brought this up earlier actually, and this is probably why it sat in my head, is we are so used to taking the easy route. And what I mean by that is familiarity. I can never say that word. Things that feel familiar. That's the one. Thank you. We're so used to doing that. We're so used to sitting in comfort because we are creatures of habit. And that's why some of us have bad habits, because we're so used to the outcome. Until you take that first step into unfamiliar territory, you're never going to understand the opportunities that lie before you. If you're putting yourself in a fishbowl on all the time, then how do you know that, if you're in a fishbowl, how could you possibly know if there's a lake underneath you? You need to step out. You need to step out of your comfort zone at all times.
And that's
we're not put on earth to settle, and I genuinely believe that no one on earth is put here to settle, and we should always be challenging ourselves.
Absolutely, mate. And that's everything that I say all the time, that nothing grows in your comfort zone. And like growth and like amazing things are just outside of that comfort zone. So it's not about bulldozing everything out and just really going for it. It's about just taking a little step and another step and another step, and you'll get to where you're supposed to be. But so many wise words there, mate, and it delivered in such a gentle, familiar, kind way, which is, I think, what we all need to hear and see and do and be. So I hope that everyone listening really just appreciated the fact that life isn't linear and there are ups and downs for every situation, and just being kind to yourself is enough in a lot of ways. And it's just prioritizing that self-care element. And it's not, for us, it's not glamorized. It's just literally knowing that I don't have a lot to give today. I'm just going to do me for a while, and that's the deepest love of self-care, is like, being able to acknowledge your own boundaries and honor them. And I think that's something that you do so well. You're very clear on if it's like a last minute plan, or if you're not feeling great that day, you're never sacrificing your own peace of mind and care for pleasing others. And I think that's something that we can all take from, and what why boundaries are so important. But equally, it's just to show and know that we are the center of our universes. So if we are not full, then we can't give anymore, and that's the core.
Absolutely. And on the self-care thing, and like you said, loving ourselves. And I know a lot of people will probably take that as an egotistical thing, but look at it in a different sense. If we're constantly showing up for others, how can we possibly show up for others the best way before we show up for ourselves?
Absolutely.
We have to show up for ourselves before we can give to others. You can't offer a drink of water from an empty cup.
Absolutely. I was about to say that. Can't give from an empty cup. Another one that I like to say. So you have to fill your cup up first, and then you can pour out to others. And equally on that as well, just as a theme of the podcast, this episode today, is that acknowledging our trauma and the things that have happened to us in our lives will always be the most rewarding and necessary thing to do in order to step forward into your own light. You have to go back and understand before you can go forward. And that was evident from grief, from the clients that you work with. If we can address that trauma, that thing that's holding us back, and we can snap the cord of that, understand it fully, we'll completely traject forward into the direction of our dreams and goals and soul's purpose, as you have, mate. So, yeah.
Really. And I think for those that haven't possibly gone through any of that, I think compassion is also needed because, and I've said this to you before, when we had a conversation, is every single person on the planet's traumatized, but not everyone's traumatized. There's a difference.
100%.
And for those that are not traumatized, that's where the compassion needs to come stronger, because there's people out there dealing with silent battles that you'll never understand. And judgment is never going to help. So I think compassion is something that we all need to practice more. 100%.
And instead of thinking why they or they're really hard work or whatever, it's like, actually, what's happened to them to make them like that? Because people aren't just mean and cold and horrible, quote unquote, for no reason. It's always something that's happened, isn't it, the root of it? But
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time, Jade. And I think, where can people buy your book?
Amazon. So it's only on Amazon. You can either type my name in, or I think you're going to put the title.
Yeah, I will put it in there. I'll put the link. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's paperback, hardback, and ebook. So it's on Kindle as well.
Amazing. Thanks so much for joining me, Jade. And I hope that the listeners enjoyed our episode, because for us, this is just like normal catch-up conversations.
This is just like our Sundays, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, mate. It is. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. And yeah, we'll speak to you soon. Have a great week. Lots of love. Take care.
Permission to Shine with Sherisse Bisram, self-love and empowerment mentor and facilitator. To work with me, head to my website or my social media platforms. I offer sessions such as workshops in schools and workplaces. I deliver talks, and I also have programs available, and I'm available for one-to-one sessions on a 6-month, 3-month and 6-week basis. My work is all about taking you through the journey of self-discovery, all the way to true, authentic confidence and empowerment, unlearning and dismantling all of your limiting beliefs, getting to the root of who you are inside and building you up on a foundation of self-worth, self-acceptance, self-awareness and deep self-love. You are the only you there is, and that is your superpower.